of what we're going to be covering today. The presentation really shouldn't take more than 30 minutes, so we really appreciate you guys joining. There'll be time at the end for Q&A, but there's a Q&A button on your Zoom app. You're welcome to write in questions as we go along, as they come up, as they pop into your head, and we'll address them all at the end, given that there's enough time to do so. But yeah, we're going to cover, who the CPSC is and what do they regulate and why were they involved in our industry here. And we'll cover the WCMA and, who WCMA is and how they regulate our industry currently and will going forward. We're going to cover the changes to the industry due to the regulations and standards, and we'll be covering kind of how that impacts the product lines and how it impacts all of you guys and users as well. What's going to be going away, what's staying, what does the new WCMA 2022 standard cover and what does it not cover, and what other solutions will be in the market. And we'll finish by going over some of the Rollies Acmeda child safes options that we're coming up with and that we have out in the market right now to give you a good taste of what we're doing to meet the standards and what you'll probably see in the industry as well. And like I said, there'll be a live Q&A at the end, and there is a prize giveaway. Vision Magazine is going to do a raffle. Anyone that's here or signed up for this will be randomly chosen. Someone will be randomly chosen for a $100 gift card. So yeah, so that's exciting stuff. So we'll get right into it. David's going to take over here for a little bit.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know Rollies Acmeda, we've been around since 1980. We were actually the innovators or inventors of the roller shade clutch here in Stamford, Connecticut. About 10 years ago, we merged with another leading provider of window covering components out of Australia called Acmeda to form Rollies Acmeda. Today, we're providers of window covering hardware systems, as well as fabrics, aluminum extrusions, and automation solutions. We're, as I tell my friends outside of the industry, we're the biggest window coverings company that you've never heard of, because we actually don't make finished window shades. We make components. We have an innovation and design center with 25 engineers. We have over 200 people on staff across the US, Canada, Australia, and Europe. And we serve thousands of customers in 40 countries. And we also operate under some new brands now: Automate, our automation motorization line; Zipscreen, our outdoor line; and Textile, which is our fabric line. So that's a little bit about us. I'll pop to the next one, Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit about the Window Coverings Manufacturers Association. So the WCMA has actually been around since the 1950s, and they represent the interests of window coverings manufacturers, fabricators, and assemblers. Really, for the past 20 years, the Window Coverings Manufacturers Association has been very involved with child safety by developing a series of voluntary standards that have gotten increasingly more stringent over time, that people comply with to help make our window shade products safer for children and pets as well. So it's really been a good and quite successful effort on the part of the window coverings community to create voluntary standards that would that have helped make our products safer. So let me pop over to the next slide if I can. Now, I'm sure many of you have also heard recently about the Consumer Product Safety Commission. For those of you who don't know, Consumer Product Safety Commission is a government agency. It was actually founded in 1972 under the Nixon administration. And it's charged with protecting the public from unreasonable risks or injury from death associated with the use of consumer products. And window coverings fall under that jurisdiction. So a little what's happened in the past year or so is in 2022, the Window Coverings Manufacturers Association came out with probably their 6th or 7th round, I'm not exactly sure which, voluntary standard, which was more stringent than the one before it. And we actually, the Window Covering Manufacturers Association has frequently worked with the Consumer Product Safety Commission in the past to put together standards that they thought was acceptable. And really, as part of the Consumer Product Safety Commission's requirements, they are supposed to work with industry groups who are willing to self-regulate and try to get them to develop their own standards rather than impose government regulations. What happened in early part of this year, and I don't know, you may want to jump over to the next slide, Anthony, was that the Consumer Product Safety Commission decided to go ahead anyway and issue government regulations that were even more stringent than the WCMA standard and would have required very rapid compliance for the industry to meet these new, more stringent regulations. And this was from a government agency, so you would pretty much have to comply. The WCMA sued the Consumer Product Safety Commission, and the case was settled in the U.S. District Court in Washington, and the WCMA ended up actually winning that case, and the CPSC rules were vacated. In other words, they do not have any force and effect. However, that doesn't mean things aren't changing. As I mentioned, in 2022, the WCMA came out with new standards. Those voluntary standards are supposed to go into effect in, I believe, June of 2024, so the middle of next year. And there are changes. And the important thing for folks to realize is that in the interest of child safety, which is paramount, but also in the interest of being allowed to continue to operate under voluntary standards rather than government regulations, it's important for all of us to do our best to comply with the voluntary standards that the WCMA has outlined. So even though, as you all may have heard, the CPSC ruling was overturned, things are changing and standards, there are things that are going to be happening that we should all be complying with. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Anthony, who will kind of give you an overview of what these new WCMA standards that go into effect in the middle of next year mean for products that you provide or buy.
Absolutely. Thanks, David. That was great. Yeah, so as David mentioned, right, there are still things that are changing, and primarily it's the use of cords and chains. It will be limited with the WCMA 2022 standard. So it's just can't do as much with chains as we were able to do in the past, but it's all for good reason, for protection. So I'm going to kind of go over some of that. A lot of the free hanging cords or ones with non-compliant tension devices are really the things that are affected the most. So essentially cord locks, unless someone comes up with a clever way to still have something like that, those are going to go away. Things like that, tilt cords, wood blinds, anything that can create a loop of more than 16.6 inches is going to be going away and against the regulations, so or non-compliant with the WCMA. Also, the big thing is non-compliant tension devices. That's one that we really want to focus on because even ourselves, like we have one that's technically that's not compliant to the new WCMA 2022 standard, but we do have one that is. So we have an option, but our most predominant safety hold 3 is not compliant going after June 1st, 2024. So we'll cover a little bit about that and the rules and regulations around those tension devices. So as I mentioned, cords and chains, that's what's most impacted here. So it does allow, like obviously we want to go cordless in the industry. Everything is going that way or towards that way, but chains and cords still have a place in the industry if they're done properly and compliant. So This is how you can use chains and cords. If the cords are short, less than 8 inches, they don't pose a threat, and they are considered compliant based on the new 2022 standard. If the cords are inaccessible, which is within 12 inches of the headrail, and also, or if they can't be touched with an accessibility probe. So it is an actual probe that they try to, if they touch the cord, that it is a force applied to it to see if it exposes enough cord to pose a threat. And then loops that do not exceed 16.6 inches in circumference, or about 8 inches in diameter, are also compliant. So that's another way to use a cord. So we'll go into some of the solutions that meet those standards. The other one is retractable cords. You can use retractable cords up to 36 inches in length, but it has to meet applicable testing, and it also has to have an approved warning label. One of the big applicable tests there with the retractable cord, they do have retractable cords, is that it has to retract fully with 30 grams of additional weight on it or force. So that's one of the big ones. They are subjected to life testing and deflection testing as well. And then, or you can still use a cord or a chain if there is a compliant tension hold with approved warning label as well. And then there's obviously tests involved with that too, which we'll talk about. The big thing here on the right, we show one of the compliant tension devices, right? It's held under tension, and we'll go over the requirements. And the product on the right is like a chain shield where it does not leave more than 16 inches of cord exposed. So that is also compliant. What's not compliant are some of these tension holds like that are shown in the bottom, ones that don't put tension on the product, or there's some other standards which we'll talk about as well. So that's the gist of it. Products that do require safety labels, like I said, are the compliant retractable cords, anything up to 36 inches, and must be retracted at rest as well, and with that additional force. And then the clutch-based systems are okay with the compliant tension device and the proper labeling. This is an example of some of the labeling that WCMA 2022 calls out for. And that's with the continuous loop, or with the tension device, and then also with the retractable cord lift system as well. Those are the examples of the labels. There's a couple other ones that are in the standard, which if you haven't seen, obviously you'll need to. So requirements for tension device, we wanted to highlight this because it is very important and very impactful in the industry. Number one requirement is it has to be attached to the chain by the manufacturer. So it can't be just thrown in the box or whatever and allowed for the user or the installer to put it up. It has to be attached onto the device, and it also has to be it also has to prevent operation if not properly installed. So if it's installed too high or too low, the chain should not be able to move. If it is able to move and able to operate the shade, with it installed improperly, then it's not compliant. It must be under tension when installed. So typically they'll have a spring in there or something like that will hold, that will allow it to be mounted and then operated there. So that's a big thing. And also it must not be able to be broken off. So I highlighted those three because I think those are the big ones there. So if a manufacturer sends this out on a chain, it can't be easily popped off like by hand there. So those are the big things. There's other testing that's involved, UV stability testing. So they put it in a UV chamber for a certain amount of hours, and it has to be able to pass that. And then they do the impact test after the UV stability, and then there's also a durability test to make sure it can't be broken off or anything like that. And it also must be supplied with fasteners for wood substrates. And the last one, which I didn't mention here, but I did in the previous slide, is it must be supplied with one of the proper warning labels. So that kind of covers the tension devices. So, as the industry is changing, what other solutions are going to be available? I just kind of put some examples here. Obviously, wand solutions are going to be a little more prevalent. Something like this, like which we're calling our chain shield, which limits the amount of exposed cord. That is still acceptable, and then maybe crank systems as well might get a little boost, but that's probably on the lower end. But these don't really require labels because they're compliant with the standard and they don't have tension devices. These don't need tension devices to operate, so and be compliant. Obviously, spring solutions are going to be probably see a pretty much an advancement in this if people don't want to use tension devices or proper tension devices or anything like that. And we're seeing this sector grow as well in the industry. It's nice cordless. You don't have to worry about anything, right? You don't have to worry about warning labels or anything like that. And cordless products are becoming more and more prevalent. And they offer also a nice midterm cost solution between clutches and motorization. So, other way. And motorization is the last one. You'll see wand motors, you'll see app-enabled motors, you see, like Google Play and Alexa-enabled motors, things like that, single pull motors, things with really short cords. Again, these don't require, those labels for WCMA. So that covers that. We'll go over some of the Rolly Zacmeta product solutions just to give you more of a taste of what's coming and what's going to be compliant versus what's not compliant. As we mentioned, our chain shield, this one just limits. We have a wheel device in there that holds the chain shield in place, so you can operate it one-handed. You don't need a tension device. It can be operated away from the wall, which is beneficial. Or if you don't want to drill holes in the wall or the mullion or whatever, then this is a nice solution. It limits operation because you only have a shorter amount of exposed chain, but it is it is compliant and does work well. So that's the chain shield. We have a precision wand coming out. This one's not applicable yet, but it's going to be coming. It's going to be launching in Q1, and it just hides the chain, really, right? The chain becomes inaccessible and therefore compliant, and it's like a ratchet or crank mechanism where you just push the handle up and down to make the shade go up and down based on the configuration. But again, this is one-handed operation. You don't need a tension hold. It can be pulled away from the wall. There's benefits to this as well. And then we have a suite of spring systems. We do have our Easy Spring wand. That's ideal for shades that are a little bit harder to reach, behind a couch, behind a desk, something like that. But again, this is compliant. These two are the Easy Spring Ultra and the Easy Spring Wand are based on the same system. It's a locking spring system where you pull the hem bar down, where you pull the wand, and the shade will come down. You give it a little tug either on the hem bar or on the wand, and the shade will rise automatically and hit its top limit there. So these are two of our solutions, and we also recently this year launched our new balance spring system. So this is a little bit different of a spring system. It doesn't have that auto rise feature. You just place the hem bar wherever you want. It's also nice. Some people find it more intuitive. Ours is very simple. It's easy to manufacture. You just turn a wheel, put it in, and pre-turn it, and you're good to go. And we do have the big benefit of this one is we do have a tension lock on there, and we do have tension adjust on the bracket, so you don't have to pull this down to adjust tension on there. So this is a nice little solution there. And we launched this with a fabric wrap hem bar that also has a handle, so you're not touching the fabric, or you can use a pull stick for harder to reach shades. So this is available in 1.5 inch, but we also have 2-inch adapters coming out, and we'll have a 45 mil version as well. And then we have a slew of motor options. I highlighted 2 of these lower cost motors. We're calling them our basics line, and we have a wand motor that's out now. We're actually improving that one already, where we're going to have or giving an alternate control mechanism, we're going to have a magnetic wand coming out for that as well. So it doesn't have to be, the wand doesn't have to be hanging there in the window all the time. And it's easily, you could easily attach it to the motor, control your motor, and then remove the wand if you want. You could use that one wand on multiple motors, which is beneficial. And then we have a simple 5-channel remote coming out. So this is just one-way communication. So there's no hub integration. We obviously have our whole suite of automated lines as well that have hub and app compatibility and everything like that. So that's the quick run through. I think we covered that in well under 30 minutes, and we're gonna.
Hey, five minutes under.
Go back and talk about
a couple of questions in the Q&A. Section.
All right.
Are you able to pull them out, or I can?
See if I can pull that up. Can the change shield be used on existing systems? It can. I'll jump back to that real quick. Yeah, that's the nice thing about it. It's just we have this set up in fixed lengths, but we to really complement fixed chain loops. So like 3 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot chain loops. These are kind of set up to do that, and they could really be used on any clutch system, not just our clutch system, which is nice as well. So that's a pretty good one there. Yeah, so that's a good question. I hope that answered your question, Pat. Yeah, if not, type something else in there. Is the effectivity date in June 2024 the cutoff date to receive orders, ship orders, or install orders that meet the 2018 standard? My understanding is that that's for shipments. Like you can't produce anything after that date.
And that's also the 2022 standard, not 2018.
Right. He's saying still comply to the 2018 standard. At what point do you have?
Oh, I see what it is. Okay. Cut off or pump. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Sorry, getting the hang of this. Okay.
Which?
Hi. What if customer removes the tension device after installation? Obviously, we don't want that. I don't think there's any way to control that though, and I think WCMA recognizes that, and we're just putting our best foot forward and making it so they can't remove it, or as hard as they can to remove it. We're putting the labels on there, making it so it has to be broken off to be removed, and that's why we're having the manufacturer install it. That was one of CPSC's arguments there, that that can happen. There's a potential that someone can remove it themselves when they put it up there, but there's nothing against that in the WCMA standard, right? There's no way of really preventing that.
We do have customers who will, for what it's worth, take a picture with their phone of the tension device installed when they leave the house, and just put it in the customer file. So that's that they complied with everything when they left the house. It's kind of up to you. So
yeah. Fine. Yeah, that's good. And then Evan asked, can ball stops be used with the chain shield? While I'm on that, yeah, they can. So the way we have this configured now is that the ball stop does operate with the chain shield. It will stop at this bottom funnel down here. So it changes your length, right? So if you have calculations or whatever to put your ball stop on, and it changes that, or changes your method of putting it on there. So instead of stopping at the clutch, the ball stop stops down here. So you have to account for that. But it will pass the chain.
With our longest current shade shield, you can make an approximate 95-inch long shade with one of the chain shields and ball stops. I think is what it wasn't about that, Anthony. It was just about 90. It was about 94, 95 inches was to be able to use ball stops, the 4 foot long chain shield.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. What a couple people asked about top down, bottom up shades, if they will be compliant. So yeah, David, I don't know if you have
That's a good question. I'm going to defer because we had not focused on that. I don't want to, we'll get you an answer on that question. We can just email. Grace would be able to email back the group just what the answer to
Yes,
that was. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's
I
important.
apologize. We're not looking at the top down, bottom up shades. So
Yeah, we
I
do
don't want
have
to go.
quite a few people that are dealing with the custom soft shade. So if we could, yeah, I believe we're going to be able to send the presentation to all the participants. And if you have additional questions, we will be able to get back to you.
Yeah, but I don't want to answer that wrong. So top down, bottom.
That's a good point, David. Let's not do that. Okay.
we try not to make things up. So.
Right.
I do think it depends on how the cords are run too. I've seen
Yeah.
top down, bottom ups with them run inside channels, and if they're unaccessible inside channels, I know they're compliant. But ones run down where it's exposed, that's another question.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
several more.
Yeah, I'll leave it at that, and we'll get back to you on that one. A couple people asking about our current compliant chain tension devices. We do have them, and I'll pull them up and put that in the chat as well. This way you guys could see that. Actually, I probably could pull it up here real quick.
I'm trying to see if I can get it on the. It's been it's called our chain hold. It's actually been available for approximately 2 to 3 years. So if you haven't seen it before, then Anthony's showing it there. I don't know if you zoom in a little bit. There you go.
Yeah. So this is a compliant chain hold. It just to kind of expand on that conversation, like it has a spring in there, and it'll hold the chain in place. So if it's not installed properly, the chain won't move, which is meets that part of the standard. And then you have to pull it down where that so it clears that stoppage and it's under tension, and then the chain will move, and it has to be installed onto the wall that way. So this is compliant. Our safety hold, which is shown up here, is not compliant. And the reason why is that could be installed a foot above the bottom of the loop, right? And now you don't have it under tension the whole time. So that's a good example of a non-compliant one, and then ones that are compliant here. So this is a two-piece thing. As the manufacturer, you would have to kind of snap these two together and have it on the chain when it is shipped out. And because the way the snaps are designed is that it has to be kind of broken apart to be taken off. So and it becomes unusable.
I will say that the manufacturers have adopted the new chain hold have found it easier to assemble. It's I think about the same price, and it comes in our existing safety hold 3 comes only in clear. The new chain hold comes in clear, but also white, vanilla, black, and gray. So it's for those who have adopted it, they seem pretty pleased with it.
Yeah, I don't know if I could add this in here. I was trying to add a picture.
There's cordless or clutch systems for Roman shades. So I hope I'm not.
You go ahead.
Are we? You were keeping track there for a moment of who was answering questions. So we're working on evaluating how our spring systems work for cordless for Roman shades. But we are coming out with clutch systems for Roman shades. What we understand is that with the loss of cord locks in the Roman shade market, Roman shade manufacturers are looking for narrow installs. So we're going to be coming out with something in fairly short order called our R10 system that allows for a clutch operated system that fits on an 1.5-inch wide dust board, so a fairly narrow dust board. And when you combine that with our chain shield or with our tension device, it's compliant. We're also trying to see if we can be on a slightly wider board to get the. We have to be able to give people the advice on how much tension our spring systems to work with Roman shades, and our guys are working on trying to figure out what the proper tension would be. So that'll be hopefully by the time we, in early 2024, so about 6 months before the rule comes into effect, we'll have information on how you can use our cordless systems for Roman shades. And of course, we do have a series of value priced motors that coming out now that allow you to work with that as well.
Yep. And Sarah asked about the tension devices that are in coordinates, if we had them, and I think we answered that. If not, let me know. John says, great presentation, very clear. Thank you very much. What makes tension devices compliant versus not compliant? I hope we answered that as well. No, let me know. Can you explain the wand option on your slide? New solutions available manual. It looks like it folds. New solutions available. Is that art? I guess I'm trying to figure out which one.
Easy spring wand, is that
this one maybe? This one I think you're talking about. This one folds. Yeah, this is like a crank system. These are usually used for like awning type systems, but there's also indoor ones, and it does fold. It's kind of like we'll lay, you can extend it so it's all the way down, I guess, and then it folds up where you can kind of use it as a crank system. So
you can remove it as well. You can actually remove the crank altogether.
Right, you can remove the whole crank system that David's talking about. So
that's a fairly expensive system used for larger shades. And as Anthony alluded, we're coming out with a magnetic wand version motor system that also allows you to remove the wand if you want to do that for appearance.
Yeah. Madison asks, is the purchase good when needed in stock and get affordable shipment? I guess I don't really understand that question.
Is that from Madison? I don't know, is that a particular product? So some of these products are in stock. Chain shields are in stock. Basic motor, wand motors are in stock. Tension devices are absolutely in stock. If there's you can feel free to reach out to us, Madison. If there's a particular product you'd like to know about, we can tell you where that is. One of my clients asked me, the chain shield or other solutions are.
One of my clients here.
FHA or ANSI for multifamily. I believe that's another one that I believe the answer is yes, they're compliant with that, but nominal, if you let us just double check on that with our commercial team, they would, because I believe they have been promoting these things into the commercial and multi-family market, but I would like to get more details on that.
Yeah.
Cord through rings and restrictions. So I believe you're talking about, Pat, I believe you're talking about the back of Roman shades, which is there any change to the current standards on that? No. The current standards for the back of Roman shades should prevent, it's a similar thing. You don't want to have anything that's more than an 8-foot circumference that would allow a child to push their head through. So there are ring locks, or there are people who are using the shroud systems to prevent a child from pulling the inner quarter Roman shade out more than that 8-inch diameter, so that they can't get their head through. If that's not what you were asking about, Pat, glad to answer another. Glad to answer another question.
Okay, and then Kevin asked about B chains. What type of work with the tension device? Make sure it keeps under tension, traditional connectors, and all that. And so our tension device, this one that I had pulled up before, does work with connectors and ball stops as well. But,
and I believe, just so you all know, that I believe our sales of that tension device were starting to scrape, getting close to $1 million for last year. So it's a pretty well, if you're not using it, I just want you to know it's a pretty well established system. So
Yeah, it's been out for a while. Yeah. And we use a lot of them. Cord loops are discontinued if, as long as they're longer than that 16.6 inches.
well, no, cord loops, one can use a cord loop with an approved tension device.
Sure.
Now, had the CPSC regulations gone in, cord loops would have been discontinued, but that did not happen.
Correct.
So you can continue to use cord loops, but it does need to be with a new, or with a tension device that meets the new WCMA standards.
Okay. All right. And Susan had asked about, Susan had asked to clarify some of the cord lengths. Yeah. What they do, the WCMA 2022 standards, basically gives a pass to any cords that are considered inaccessible. And if you read the standard, the inaccessible cords are defined as any cords that are within 12 inches of the headrail, or no matter where they are, with the shades up or down or whatever like that. So a short little like cord pull up near the headrail is okay, or if it can't be touched with an accessibility probe. And then, cords that are shorter than 8 inches, no matter where they are in the shade, are also acceptable. So, right, if you have an 8-inch cord down by the hem bar, it's also acceptable, or 8 inches or less. And within the 12 inches of the headrail is considered inaccessible. So I hope that clears it up there. Up, down, bottom, available. Yeah, Kevin stated that top down, bottom up with cord lock will not be available.
Yeah, cord locks are going away. Cord locks, in essence, in fact, one of the things where top down, bottom up are not compliant. All right. So cord locks are going away, and actually they're going away also from a practical standpoint, that cord lock suppliers no longer make cord locks because of this regulation. So they're not even being available for sale. I think Margaret had a comment: COM Roman shades top down, bottom up are not compliant. I think that's a statement rather than a question. So we'll, as I said, we'll double check. We will double check. Yeah.
Christopher brings up a good point about CPSC as well. He's asking if they'll try again with their regulations. There is a chance, and I know they did state that they were going to try again. We feel that will take a really long time for that to happen. They'll have to either go back and rewrite some of the standards, or do a little bit more research. Also, their data that they quoted was wrong, and that was acknowledged in the courts. So they would have a long road to get back and to challenge this again. So this WCMA standard will definitely come into effect before they have a chance to kind of really get that point.
It was pretty easy to prove that WCMA standards had significantly improved child safety, when complied with, so it was like they were having a hard time proving the need for their regulations.
Exactly, and that's what the court decided too. It was like, hey, you guys are doing a good job. You guys have proven that like you're keeping children safe and all of that. So I think they're going to have a really hard road if they did want to challenge it again.
So
for me,
Eric France asked the question: for manufacturers currently using safety hold 3, switch to shade hold brings them into compliance without any additional products or shield? Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah. Yes. So this one was asked if the compliance rules are applicable to commercial installations. Yes, absolutely. There's no with WCMA and CPSC, there was no distinguishing between commercial and residential.
There was I'm not as familiar with it. There was a distinction in Canada, and I don't want to get too far into that because I'm not 100% familiar with Health Canada rules, but there was a distinction in Canada, but there is no distinction in the United States.
Exactly. Margaret had a statement that they need better cordless options.
Margaret's not letting me off the hook that easily. She wants her cordless system, so thank you, Margaret. We will certainly. And I believe Sandra has asked me that same question as well before. So yes, we are aware of that. So.
Does your current legacy clutch work with cord loop with your compliant tension device? Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all our clutches are still compliant as long as you use the proper cords and tension devices as well. So, so that's answers that one. Will you be discontinuing the slim and large workroom clutch since you're making a new Roman shade clutches?
There's no immediate plan to continue the existing what we call workroom system. However, the new system that we're coming out with, the RR10 and the RR20 system, a little simpler to assemble. Shade goes up a little faster, which means it will work better with a shield device. And it also is interchangeable with, it's interchangeable. We're hoping that it is interchangeable with motors. It's also the system that one would use, the assembly of a roller Roman type system that one would use if we come out with a cordless spring-driven system. So there is no immediate plans to discontinue the existing ones, but the new ones we're coming out with should make it easier to do clutch, motorized, and hopefully, especially since we're getting a lot of questions, cordless systems, a spring-driven system.
Okay. Okay. One of my clients asked me to ask if the child change shield or other solutions comply. Oh, we talked about that one. Sorry.
And we'll find out. I assume we'll be able to get copies of all these questions and be able to, anything that we didn't fully answer, get more information on about, for example, the top-down, bottom-up shades of the FHA, ANSI. We'll get back to you on. So I think we have to wrap it up pretty soon. I see my lights just turned off in my office. So
I would say let's answer just a couple more questions, and then we do have your questions recorded, and we will get back to you with the answers. Great set of questions. So, gentlemen, if you could just kind of glance through and see which ones you can answer on this particular session. What about Ron Albertini? What's going to happen with blinds already installed? How will they know if the blinds were before or after the new law?
You do not. I do not believe you need to go back and do any. You do not need to retrofit things that have already been installed prior to the June 20th date. There's no requirement to go back.
Correct. Yeah. Okay.
You don't have to go back. You don't have to go back and do it. On the other hand, if you know a client who has children, there are customers who go back and offer to retrofit in motors or things like that. Just, the same way there are services out there that will baby-proof your house. They'll offer those kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah, Kathy, for commercial applications, motorized or continuous cord loop, with appropriate tension device. Yeah, I mean, those are options. There are other ones that are out there. There's those one products, things like that we showed. So there are other solutions, spring systems you could be using there. So it's a matter of preference.
So for nylon cord loops, you can, that's a good question. Our tension device does not work with nylon cord loops. I know that there's been versions of shields that they've been working on. We don't have one, but we can get back to you on what might be out there. Okay, I think we may be out of time.
I think again, wonderful questions. We will answer all the questions, and we will have this webinar available on our blog on the Window Fashion Vision website. So wf-vision.com. For those of you that would like to go back and review it or send it to some of your staff or colleagues. This has been really wonderful. I want to thank you both, Anthony and David, for your time and putting it together. Very well done. Even I could understand what you're talking about and what is available, what is compliant and non-compliant, which is great. A big thank you to Rollies for volunteering to do this on this very important October Safety Month. And again, thank you to all of you who attended. You guys are awesome for being concerned and being on this webinar this morning. We will be able to answer your questions and keep posted. If anything, you need to reach out. My email is grace@wf-vision.com. So if you're not getting the answers you need where we told you can find them, bug me and I'll get them to you. Again, Anthony, David, thank you so much for being with us this morning, and all of you be safe and have a great day. Take care.